Okay, just thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Just a brief overview of who our company is. Only one slide to sit through. We have been a market research company focused exclusively on software development for almost 18 years now. We do syndicated surveys, which we sell to anybody that wants to buy them. They're done on a regular basis. There's a broad one on global development. Our panel is a worldwide reach. We do a lot of global surveys. We also do ones on specific technologies such as big data, cloud, Internet of Things is our recent one. We also do a yearly developer population model, which gives estimates and projections for the worldwide developer population and broken down by regions and in countries, major countries. And of course, we do custom research, and we do a developer relations conference every year, which is going into its 13th year now, which is a conference for developer relations professionals, people who put together programs, which we'll talk about in a little while. And these are some of our clients. So this whole conference is about platforms, and platforms have become very, very important. As Peter said, he found 176 platforms with that were over $1 billion, but there's a whole lot more of them. In fact, you'd be surprised. It's basically everybody that wants to be connected into the world of software, the world that's more and more connected, needs at least some APIs. And if they have APIs, they pretty much have a platform. But this is not, when I showed Peter this slide, he said, well, this looks all very nice and peaceful, but it's not really, because what we're having now is once you have a new dynamic in the market, which is what we have now, which is the whole new competitive scene, it becomes very competitive. People want the developers to adopt their APIs, not their competitors' APIs. You've got to get developer adoption, or your platform will fail. And if your platform fails, that's going to be a huge competitive disadvantage. So you've got various platform providers now. The traditional platforms, the IBM, Microsoft, Intel, the new innovative ones that we think of like Google and Apple and PayPal. And then we've got vertical industry platforms, people like Ford and GE. John Deere has a platform. Nike has a platform. Some people might be surprised that Nike has a platform, but they've had one for a couple of years now. They do wearables. They make things into the shoes that will be beneficial, and they want one of the biggest benefits to having an open platform is that you get innovators throughout the development community who will think of things to do with your platform that you and your crew of engineers would never think of. So you're drawing on a whole group of people who are typically very imaginative, innovative anyway. And so this is extremely important, and as you might imagine, there's a lot of competition. The APIs is where we start with the developers, and the API use is pervasive amongst developers. If developers are writing apps now, virtually all of them use some kind of APIs from somewhere. In the typical app, obviously there's back-end apps and so forth. On the right-hand side, we see a comparison of the major regions and what types of APIs they're mainly using. And you can see that in North America, we're a little bit more conservative. We have partner APIs. There's a lot of partner APIs that have been established with companies throughout the years. In the Latin America and APAC, the new regions where we see, in the newest regions, we usually see developers adopting new technologies faster than anywhere else. EMEA kind of tends to lag. Developers determine adoption. You might say, well, how important are these guys in the actual adoption of my APIs? And it turns out they're very important. The development manager, the team leader, Sometimes the individual developer are the people that actually make these decisions. And as you can see, it's multiple people in some time. That particular graph right there, or table right there, shows cases. It means percent of cases, which means that the developers could select multiple answers. So that's why that doesn't add up to 100%. But as you can see, they're very influential. They also perceive that APIs are extremely important to their strategy and their company's strategy, and this doesn't vary very much from one region to another. You can see that there's only a very slight variation amongst developers who think that APIs are definitely important to their overall strategy. So who are these developers? And as Peter said, I'm going to tell you a few demographics, because we've been studying demographics for ages and ages. And this one shows just kind of a little sketch of developers and their basic global demographics. I find the age chart to be really interesting, because here you see the age chart going back for several years, comparing the various regions. And what's interesting to me is that yellow line. That was North America, or it is North America. And as you can see, in North America, we used to have the oldest developers. Why was that? It was because software development pretty much got its foothold here in North America. So you had a whole lot of older developers, much older than the other three regions. However, in about 2008, 2010, this took a big decline, and that coincides directly with our Great Recession. To have a demographic change such as that yellow line depicts, you have to have two things happen. You have to have old developers retiring, or in this case, maybe being laid off. The older ones are typically the most well-paid, and unless they're superstars, chances are they were getting the pink slips. At the same time, we had app stores being introduced. We had mobile technology being introduced. We had technologies that were really inspiring to younger developers. And so then you got the two things going on where the younger developers are coming in, the older developers going out, and that's the only thing that can create such a dramatic demographic change as we see there. In the other regions, they were pretty steady. The APAC region has traditionally been the youngest, and now they're getting a little older, but that happens to most of us. There are a few other demographics. Most developers are married. The average median age across all the regions at this point is about 38 years. 28% are women, which is a big advance in the last 10 years, or even the last 5 years. We'd only see one digit participation by women. But in the last several years, this has really changed. And I think that's because there's been quite a lot of initiatives trying to get women involved in coding. And then down in the bottom, this is the moonlighting by region. And as you can see, moonlighting is very pervasive everywhere. And what do we mean by moonlighting? We mean developers who work on their own projects during the day for their employers. Then they go home and they work on something else for themselves. And this is a large force that I think explains the kind of what we think of as the myth of the hobbyist. Where are these hobbyists? We hear, oh, there's hobbyists everywhere that are writing programs. Well, I think the hobbyists are standing right in front of our faces in the guise of developers who go home at night and do more for themselves. Here's our population estimate for right now. We've got APAC has just surpassed the rest of the regions. Of course, Latin America started pretty low. We only just started charting it, but we're expecting that APAC is going to continue to be the largest region. And in our definition of APAC, we have India as well as China and the Southeast Asian areas where there's just a lot of growth in developer population, and those developers are very anxious to embrace new technologies. Next. We do a little psychographics. It's kind of fun. We ask them questions that are designed to help marketing people really look at them. And here we've just asked, why are they in development? Is it for the money? Is it something else for the money? Software development is a very particular type of endeavor where you really have to be literally minded. You really have to be logical. And most of the developers that we see in our surveys really are in it because they like it. It's for the challenge. It just suits them. And then this other thing is about source code. So open source has been pretty much used pervasively throughout all development areas for the last 8-10 years. And it still is. They also do cloud. This is a little bit about cloud and mobile development. Here we see a trend line that shows mobile development, and as you can see, it continues to go up. Mobile developers are not just people that write apps for your phone. They are also corporate developers. Almost everybody needs to have a mobile client if they're writing a new app these days. And down in the bottom is the greatest areas that we see for growth in cloud, which is a different subject altogether. But I thought this one was really interesting because here you've got big data. Big data and Internet of Things is where developers think the cloud is most going to be spurred in growth. And here's Internet of Things. This is one of our hottest areas that people are interested in, so I brought this along. This one shows the global distribution of Internet of Things, and you can see within the regions that if you look at the no plans, it's very telling that the Asia Pacific region is very, very hot to do this. Some of them are doing them now, some of them are planning to, but more are in those two categories than in any of the other categories. North America is fairly close behind. EMEA strangely lags. And what are the hot IoT targets? This is another interesting one because what we can see here is that that red bar is currently targeting, and you can see that and this was only asked of people that are doing Internet of Things development. But what you can see is that industrial devices are one of the hottest areas right now. Another interesting thing about this, though, is wearables, because you can see that blue bar is something they've targeted in the past but are no longer targeting now. So if you remember 3 or 4 years ago, everybody was trying to do wearables. It was the hottest thing. Now, if you look at this graph, you can see that maybe we're moving on into some of the other areas, notably industrial. AI and deep learning. Machine learning is very, very hot this year. The developers are really catching on to this. They're very much interested in it. You have a lot of vendors that are putting out libraries, that are putting out whole platforms to help people adopt AI, cognitive computing. There's Watson, there's Haven on Demand, there's Cortana. They're all competing, and they're all competing very suddenly. And developers are really eating this up. They're really very interested in it. Here's we see some of the AI types of things that we asked about. And then on the smaller bar, we asked if they said, yes, I'm going to be doing deep learning. We asked about what kind of methods they're going to be used for that. And these are very, all of these methods are very well attuned to machine learning. So we find that this is probably one of the hottest areas that's happening right at this moment. We wanted to show you industrial developers. We can part out the developers in any way. And so what we did was we ran a filter on industrial developers. We could have done it on some other type, but we thought that this would be interesting. And so here you can see some actual differences between industrial developers and commercial developers. Namely, industrial developers tend to be older. They tend to work for companies that are older, which may or may not be a surprise. And they, those are basically the two charts you see here. Some of the other bullets are not represented with charts, but some of the other things we found out is that while they're not actually using big data projects as much as some of the more mainstream developers, they are very much more so planning to do so. So that's another thing that's entering into their plans. And they are more likely to be working on IoT, and they're more likely to be using C++ and not scripting languages. So we wanted to know, once we've got our minds wrapped around who developers are, let's think about platform selection. And we asked them, why would you choose a platform over another one? And this question is the result of that. And basically, the quality of the developer community is very important, as well as development tools. Some of the other ones fall off pretty dramatically after that. But we find over and over again this community support is a big factor, as well as tools and technical information. So if you're going to supply technical information and try to build a community, what do? You build what we call a developer program. And the largest established platform vendors have had these programs for years, and they get to be quite a science in what they put in a program, how they measure their success. But as you'll notice, that we asked developers if they use APIs that do not have a program, and only 34% said they do. So that maybe emphasizes the importance of having a program, and a program that works. People say that, the developers say that if they're not in a program, then it makes the process significantly harder, significantly longer. So again, that's another reason to provide a program, if not just to be competitive, but to also help these developers come out with innovative solutions in a minimum of time. This is a graph that shows program membership over the years. The dark brown line is no memberships. And that's, if you concentrate on that, that one's pretty telling, because we have paid memberships, we have free memberships, and those vary up and down, but the brown line continues to descend. It used to be that there were maybe just a little more than 40% of people in a program. Now it's about 80%. So, and then there's one thing I should point out to you about the line that says yes paid. It appears to go down. Well, I'm always saying data points does not a trend make. But the other thing to notice about this one is that at the same time that the yes paid went down, the yes both paid and free went up. So it's really what we should take out of that is that more free programs are being added in, even to the people that are paying. Most developers are in more than one program, by the way. And what's the reasons to join a program? Again, the top reasons are technical information, tech support. Developers are very practical people. They want to have somebody help them write their apps. They want them to go quickly. They want to have a minimum of trouble. Some of the things that are most highly desired are the things that you might suspect. They want to talk to engineers. If they have an issue, they don't want to call up and talk to a QA guy that doesn't know as much as they do. So they're very well educated, well tuned into to any technology they adopt. So talking to engineers is extremely important. Also, they like being in the beta program. Forums are good. They like early release software. They like to be part of it. If you can, some programs even have a roadmap that they will publish to their top tier members. And there are, typically a program has more than one tier, a free tier plus a paid tier for the more top guys. And if you give them access to a potential roadmap for your product and let them comment on that, that really is a very good idea because it makes them feel really part of the program. It really inspires loyalty, and you get some good ideas, some good feedback from the people that you care about. Here's trusted sources. When you want to, this is an interesting one because it's changed over the years. As you can see, this goes back 15 years. And what's happened, this is very carefully explained as the most credible source on emerging technologies, not necessarily on anything else, but on emerging technologies. What we see is that peer resources, the pink line, has descended quite a bit, and we speculate that this is due to too many people online voicing opinions, people that have blogs about emerging technologies that may or may not know what they're talking about, and also the light blue line, which is the reporters and reviewers. Just as the bloggers have taken over, so have the reporters and the reviewers kind of gone down. But the really interesting thing and the really, I think, positive thing is that the yellow line, which is the platform vendors themselves, are now the most trusted source on the emerging technologies, which really makes a lot of sense because those are the people who are creating the emerging technologies. Here's creating a loyal community. What we've got here on the right-hand side is what we call a heat map. We do benchmarking for various programs, and they want to know how they're doing versus other programs. So we get real down into the nitty-gritty about, well, you know, how do the developers rate your SDKs? How do they rate your APIs? How do they rate your forums? All kinds of different things there. And this helps to, in order to, if you know where your strengths and weaknesses are, this can help you build that community that you want to build. The other thing is, this is, again, just a straight question that asks about the importance, things that this time we asked about what makes you feel like a partner. If you want to create loyalty in your program, you want people to feel like a partner. Give them access to engineers. More content, beta software. It's pretty much the things that we saw in the chart a little earlier. So another thing that people are doing, especially the more large established platform vendors, are they're really on the lookout for startups. The startups have become the most treasured game that people are looking for. And the way they go about it, they often use accelerators, incubators, coding contests. How does this work together? I'll give you an example. Last year, Qualcomm had a coding contest. They let it run worldwide for I think it was 9 months, might have been a year. But the developers were invited to participate in this. It had to be about robotics. And so they ran this contest for a year. At the end of the year, they selected 10 of those startups that they thought had the best ideas. They put them into an accelerator. It was run by Techstars. These companies on that side are companies that you can outsource an accelerator program to. So they took those 10 companies, they stuck them actually in a physical building in San Diego, and they provided them with tools. They provided them with a stipend. They provided them with a place to work. And most of all, they provided them with a whole lot of Qualcomm mentorship. So they were there with them every day, trying to tell them how to use Qualcomm tools, trying to get them to use Qualcomm technologies in order to build their robotics. At the end of they were there for 90 days. At the end of the 90 days, they had another contest, if you will, in which they did this in front of VCs. And at that point, the people were competing for VC dollars, or in some cases, Qualcomm to purchase their company altogether. And so this is something Qualcomm just did this last year, and that was just my example. But people are doing this all over the place. They have, Facebook has one. They have, Microsoft has one. IBM has these. It's almost all the major platform vendors do these coding contests, which lead to the accelerators, which lead to possible adoption of the technologies that they think is very good. So we also asked the developers what their perceptions of next-gen tech solutions are. Like, where do they think that the next generation of technical solutions are going to come from? And as you can see, they think established software and OS platform vendors is where they're looking for the new innovations. They also think that maybe hardware or infrastructure companies that are established, or established industrial companies. Remember that it's hard to ignore the word established in all of these three. Whereas we know that there's a lot of these startups that are trying to kind of break in, but this shows that the established companies are oh, you're going to give me the hook. Okay, I think there's only two more slides. Well, 3. Okay, so anyway, here's some. We'll go through these really quickly. We asked about the public platforms and the plans for adoption. As you can see, these are the main established companies. We asked about private ones. The thing that these look kind of similar, but if we go back and forth, whoops, let's go back and forth. You'll see that the public platforms are targeted, just the blue and red lines are much more so than the private lines. And so here's one thing this is a little bit of a conceptual thing that I wanted to talk about just very briefly. But you can scale these guys out in any way you want. But what we wanted to do was see the ease of attracting developers, and that's on the horizontal axis. The specificity of the focus is on the vertical axis. And so what you see is like a company like Microsoft, IBM, Facebook. These companies can attract developers with a major announcement. Facebook had 40,000, I think I heard, people trying to do Oculus, signing up to do Oculus in just a few weeks. GE took about a year to get 1,000 people. It's a huge difference. But what's happening is that what's happening is that the people in this quadrant over here that have an easy time and have a low specificity of focus are teaming up with the others. We've just had Microsoft announce that they're going to build a multi-million-dollar developer facility with Monsanto in Brazil. That's a very specific company, whereas Microsoft is a very non-specific company, but has a very easy time attracting developers. They also, just I think last week, announced that they're going to partner with GE. And this is a huge boon for GE because they're going to be putting the Predix platform into their IoT offerings. And that's going to open up the Predix platform to a lot of people that would normally not be exposed to it at all. And then there's others. IBM is partnering with Cisco to do chat bots. There's AT&T. I think, who is it, AT&T? Well, anyway, this is the way it kind of works. You can have partnerships. The old guys, the old established platforms are not going to roll over and play dead. That's one thing that's not going to happen. So, whoops. So that's it. This is my kind of my last slide. Whatever it is, this is just kind of urging people, no matter what your focus is, no matter what your community is, try to get those developers on board. It's just extremely important to do. And that's it for me. I'm done. 2 questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you notice in your research any correlation about the emergence of development of new languages, programming languages, with the switch of generations?
There certainly are a lot of new languages that are applied to, usually in the scripting language areas, which is we've noticed come up that are we haven't really measured them too well, but yes, the newer development and the newer types of development, such as IoT, are inspiring new scripting languages especially.